This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Every single year during the NFL season, my favorite week is week number 2. We got some data to work off of. We've seen these guys in their respective roles, but also maybe the market and maybe the DFS public haven't caught up to what we've noticed in the opening weeks of the year. So my favorite week is week 2. And to help me break it down, we're going to bring on Meghan Payton of FanDuel TV and pick her brain on her top player props across week 2 at FanDuel Sportsbook. This is Covering the Spread, a FanDuel research podcast. My name is Jim Sotis. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here once again by Meghan Payton. Check her out on X at Meghan Payton7. You can find her on FanDuel TV from noon to 2 Eastern every Monday through Friday alongside Dubs Anderson, who was with us yesterday as well. Meghan, happy week 2 to you. How you doing today?
Happy week 2, Jim. It has been a fun week 1. A lot of, I guess, wild things as we'd expect. I think the biggest one being the freaking Bengals losing to the Patriots, kicking me and everyone else out of their survivor leagues. So that was a bad beat. But other than that, some great bets for week 1. And I think you're right. Week 2 is the perfect time to jump in because it's a small sample size, but it might be enough before the market moves. So I'm with you. Week 2 is a fun one to bet.
My personal philosophy has always been, I don't mind small samples as long as I'm looking at data that stabilizes quickly. And things that stabilize quickly are snap rates, red zone usage, and stuff like that. And those play very well for player props. So yeah, it's a small sample, Meghan, but honestly, I think we've got enough to work off here at least.
I agree with you. And I'm definitely jumping like full in on week 2. And it's interesting when you look at some of these teams that now I'm thinking to myself, I'm staying away from this game, but I'm thinking to myself, like, will the Patriots actually not be as bad as we think? Then you're looking at the Panthers and you're like, are they an NFL team? So some trends stayed the same already in week 1. And then others got my brain going, I don't know what we're doing yet.
That's every year in the NFL. The brain is always in a twist, in a pretzel from week 1 through week 18. And it is a delight, a fun roller coaster the entire way. Today, we're going to talk to Meghan about some rookies. Caleb Williams, try to see if we want to buy low on guys like Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., stuff like that. Just kind of look at the rookies and see, should we buy low? Should we hold off? Should we actively bet against these guys? Stuff like that. We'll take a look at some guys who had big showings in week 1, how to handle them in week 2 and beyond, and then talk through Meghan's top bets for this week at FanDuel Sportsbook. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed wherever you get your podcast. Full week of shows already up here on the feed. Talk to Dubs on Thursday to get his best bets for NFL week number 2. We also had Kent Padgett on Wednesday breaking down his favorite bets across week number 3 in college football. To get those shows as they are posted, search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. And if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. And of course, these shows do go up on the FanDuel YouTube page. Leave us a thumbs up if you're watching over on YouTube. Football is back, and there's no better place to get in on the NFL action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now all customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. Plus, with FanDuel, you don't even have to leave the app to access real-time stats and data to help you make even more winning bets. Download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus and present in select states or 18 plus and present in DC. Offer ends 9/22/24. After a 3-week free trial, the full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally. Cancel anytime, no refunds. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account or current form of payment. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat-Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Meghan, a lot of the high-profile rookies in week 1 struggled. Caleb Williams didn't do a whole lot despite the win. Marvin Harrison Jr., 3 targets. Malik Neighbors had an okay game. And I have high expectations for these guys overall this year, and I would like to buy low on them at some point. But I don't know if week 2 is the exact time to do so. So when you're looking at things yourself, what do you need to see from these rookies before you decide buying low off them coming off underwhelming games?
What I like to look at, especially when we're talking rookie quarterbacks, I think it applies to all the positions, is that they're adapting to the speed of the game. It's the biggest transition going from college football to NFL. It is a whole lot quicker than what you're used to. It is quicker than preseason. And how can you adapt quickly? How can you read coverages, execute through all of your progressions? I feel like you just need to see that maybe in a 1 week, 2 weeks, and then you're like, cool, let's buy low. But for now, when you talk about someone like Caleb Williams, who had 93 passing yards, the Bears had no business winning that game against the Titans. And then I look at Caleb Williams' prop line this week, and it's set at like 217.5. I'm confused because what have we seen that's making us think, oh, he's immediately ready to adapt in week 2?
Yeah, and that's where it's at right now at FanDuel Sportsbook as the Bears take on the Texans. 216.5 for that game. It is indoors for Williams, but his pass catcher's banged up. Keenan Allen didn't practice again on Friday. Roma Dunze did get in a limited session, but they're definitely banged up there. And this Texans defense, Meghan, isn't so bad. So are you eyeing the under on Williams based on what you saw in week 1?
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite bets of the week. It's Sunday Night Football too, so don't forget that primetime pressure. Caleb Williams playing in front of the entire country, up against a quarterback that absolutely blew everyone's expectations last season. So there's the storyline there between CJ Stroud, last year's Offensive Rookie of the Year, and what everyone thinks is going to be this year's Offensive Rookie of the Year. I just don't see him clearing 200 yards this week. Maybe it's better than 93 yards in which he had on his debut, but this Texans defense is going to be a whole lot tougher than the Titans defense that he faced last week. So I'm absolutely playing the unders at 216.
And I think when you consider the health of the pass catchers, that does make a lot of sense. Yeah. So Meghan going to Caleb Williams under 216.5 passing yards. That is minus 114 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. I want some Tank Dell in that game, so hoping we do see some fireworks eventually from one side of that game at least. But for Williams, we're waiting to buy low on him later on. Now, Meghan, buy low is like the buzzy word. Yeah. But I also think there can be value in buying high on certain players. If they got a legitimate role change, if their situation changed in the offseason or something else happened where you're like, okay, sure, they went off in week 1, but I still think they might be undervalued in the market heading into week 2. So are there any guys you want to buy high on based on what you saw in the opener?
100%. Let's go back to the game we were just talking about between the Texans and the Bears. Joe Mixon. I mean, we knew Joe Mixon was a great running back. He did awesome stuff in Cincinnati. He goes over to Houston, and I'll be the first to say he wasn't really on my radar in week 1. I was looking at guys like Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs. Joe Mixon was the heart of the offense for the Texans in week 1, leading the entire league in rushing yards, over 100 rushing yards. And now you see a rushing yard line at 68.5. Now, Jim, I love to normally look at rushing and receiving combined, and Joe Mixon can be used a lot in those check down slants, but I'm going to focus mostly on the rushing yards this week. I just think it's too good of a number at 68.5. The Bears are going to have a little bit of trouble stopping a guy that's so explosive, that can burst, that can line up different places, and yes, can attack in the receiving game. But mostly, I think that yards after contact for Mixon is what I'll be looking at in week 2. Buying high, 68.5, taking the over.
And I think the most impressive thing with the Texans in week 1, at least for me, Meghan, was their offensive line, because they could not run the ball last year. And whether it was Devin Singletary, whether it was the offensive system, or whether it was the fact their line was banged up the entirety of last year, they looked awesome in week 1. It looked like a different team, because I had this frustration last year. The Texans was like, okay, you're trying to run the ball. You're trying to use this Kyle Shanahan offense where you run the ball quite a bit and then you unleash Stroud later on. And I was like, just let it rip, man. Cause like they weren't efficient running the football. And then all of a sudden Joe Mixon comes out and he looks freaking awesome the entire game. So I think that like the effectiveness, as much as the volume, is what surprised me when it came to Mixon and the Texans last week.
I'm absolutely in agreement with you. All 5 starting linemen were on the team last year, so they didn't change any of their starters, but the health was such a problem last season. And, when you're buying high on someone, it's not just buying high on Joe Mixon, it's buying high on the offensive line, which is going to make this whole offense effective. So as much as I'm looking at Mixon this week, I think you bring up a good point with Tank Dell. There's a lot of offensive weapons the Texans have. This is one of those games too, while we're on it, I would absolutely take an alt line. The value wasn't as good as I thought it would be if you even moved it up to double digits, but I think the Texans are very capable of blowing the Bears out in week 2.
Yeah, so potentially high in the Texans here in general. The Tank Dell one I was referring to specifically, you mentioned alt number on the spread.
Yeah.
I like his alt receiving yards. He's at plus 172 to get 70 plus receiving yards. He had 7 total targets in week 1, which is more than Stephon Diggs. He had 3 deep targets, 3 out of 5 for the team, and we've seen him be electric. So I feel like, Meghan, we're going to have this thing all year where, okay, Tank Dell underwhelmed in week 1, we buy Tank Dell in week 2. Nico Collins underperforms in week 2, we buy Nico Collins in week 3. I feel like having 3 legit guys and having a bona fide stud quarterback, we're just going to have to go towards the guy who underperformed and consistently buy low on whoever was the one man left out in this offense.
Do you think that Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf are going to be like Tank Dell, like Nico Collins? Can we start seeing that from him? Because Tank Dell showed a ton of promise last year before going out with that leg injury.
Yeah.
I took Tank Dell to get a touchdown last week. That didn't hit. I'm tempted to run it back, but Dell and Stroud connected really early on last year. It feels like the Texans could resemble the Seahawks, though, in the sense when we say like it's either a Lockett game or a Metcalf game. Right. Maybe that's what we start seeing from Nico and Tank.
And ideally, we let CJ Stroud cook, and we can get both in the same week.
That's the goal.
That would be great. I would love that for sure. But I think that's a great comp as far as having 2 legit pass catchers, very fun quarterback, and CJ Stroud, and hopefully he can let these Texans in, specifically Tank Dell and Joe Mixon in week number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, Meghan, let's talk about yardage bets. When you look at the yardage props over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where are you seeing the most value for this week?
I'll go over to the Bucs game. It's Bucs Lions. I'll start by just saying I think the Bucs are a better team than everyone's giving them credit for. I still have Tampa winning the division. Falcons look terrible. Saints might be a little bit overhyped because of how bad the Panthers actually are. But Bucs will be going up against a really good Lions team. And I'm looking at the passing prop line for Baker Mayfield. Last I checked, it was set at 255 or 260 and a half. All right, so it has moved up a bit, but I'll ride with the over here for Baker. He's going to have to throw the ball a lot. And one of the trends that we saw in week 1, Jim, was that passing yard lines were down. Not for Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had an insane game. He was throwing touchdowns. He was connecting with Mike Evans. Thank goodness the Bucs brought him back. And up against Jared Goff's offense, I mean, Detroit's going to be putting up points on the board the entire game. So that's how they're going to have to stay in this, is going to be throwing the ball. I think we'll see a lot of deep passes to Evans and maybe Godwin as well.
And I think that we'll see the effectiveness, but also we'll see the volume, because last week they're facing a Commanders team that struggled against the pass. This week they're facing a Lions team that is really good against the run and is likely adding DJ Reader this week. Reader did not play last week for them. He's going to be back in there making his Lions debut this week. So it could be even better against the run than what they were last week. And that's probably going to funnel more work towards the pass. And you're buying into Baker, the passing yardage. I bought into the Bucs in general. I took it when it was at 7. It has not moved in my favor, which does not feel great because it's now 7.5. But I think that this Bucs team, like you said, a bit undervalued, even though they did go off in week number 1. And it's not an anti-Lions thing, because I love the Lions. I've bet the Lions plenty. It's more so just, I just think the Bucs are okay, and they're being treated like they're a rung below that.
I'm with you completely. And they're going up against a Lions secondary that may have improved slightly from last season, but this was the weakest part of Detroit's defense. And Baker's going to know how to exploit that. They're going to be able to get the guys going early on. I'm with you on Lions. I like Detroit a lot as well, but it's more of I think come week 7 and 8, we're talking about Tampa in a completely different way than we are right now. And it's going to be all about playoffs and whatnot for Baker and this team.
So let's get Baker for 260.5, and let's get the Bucs plus 7.5, or hopefully for me 7 in this game as well. Okay, that's the yardage props. Meghan, what about touchdown props? Anytime touchdown, first touchdown props you like for week 2?
Anytime touchdown. I'll give you 3 because I couldn't decide between all these guys. I'll start with, let's go to the Colts. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor, anytime touchdown. And these might seem a little bit basic, but we just saw, first of all, why is Jordan Love listed as questionable? There's no way he's going to play, right?
No shot.
There's no way. It's Malik Willis out
Yes.
there. And if anyone's watched Malik Willis film, it's not good. It's not good at all. Part of the reason why I'm taking Jonathan Taylor anytime touchdown is because I don't think the Colts are going to have to do much in the passing game. They're going to put up points very quickly. One thing that Indy's going to do just overall as the season is hopefully keep Anthony Richardson a bit more healthy. Don't just let him run all over the place. That's what hurt him last year. So rely on one of the best running backs that you're paying a ton of money to now, and Jonathan Taylor. And another thing about Taylor is, yes, we know how great he is. He's effective. He's tough, but he's not having – Zach Moss isn't there. And Zach Moss ate up a lot of those carries, a lot of the red zone carries as well. And so now it really does fall on JT. And at plus 110, this is one of my favorites of the weekend.
96.5% snap rate for JT in week 1 and 4 out of 8 red zone touches for the team. So even though Anthony Richardson will steal some work at the goal line, Taylor was still involved, did score in that one too. So plus 110, we saw Saquon score 3 times against this Packers defense in Brazil. Wouldn't be shocked if JT gets there too. So I'm on board with number 1, Meghan. What's your second touchdown prop?
All right, number 2, back to the Bucks game. I should have thrown this one in first, but Mike Evans, if we're going to be taking over on Baker, we both like the Bucks to cover. I like Mike Evans. He's such a good receiver, and he's such a good receiver for Baker. The chemistry is there, and I think that's one of the things, we were hoping Baker was going to find when joining Tampa, is he could connect with an insane guy like Evans at plus 120. He had a touchdown last week. All these guys that I'm looking at did have a touchdown in week 1. So I'm buying into the trends here. And I still think we're getting it at a pretty good number. He's the shortest Buccaneer as far as anytime touchdowns, but it's still plus 120, which was surprising to me.
Yeah, plus 120 for Mike Evans. Rachaad White, plus 135. Chris Godwin, plus 160, the guy who we were banking on for touchdown regression all of last year and didn't really get there until all the way at the end. But Godwin scored last week too. Jalen McMillan could have had like 3 or 4 touchdowns last week, frankly. He's 3-1. I was kind of hoping we'd get him at 5. It didn't happen, but did at least look there too. So in general, buying the Bucks, Evans plus 120. Do like that one too. All right, what's your third one here, Meghan?
All right, there's a lot of different options. I was debating. I wanted to throw in Derrick Henry. I wanted to look at a couple of different. All right, but can I throw in a long shot for?
Let's do it.
Let me give you my long shot because this one actually isn't one that hit, but it's in the same division. We're gonna go with Trevor Lawrence anytime rushing touchdown.
Love it. Okay.
I had to throw in one for you that was like plus 410. Here's my sell. Let's start with, he had 9 rushing touchdowns the last 2 seasons. And I know it's hard when you're looking at rushing touchdowns for quarterbacks, especially for guys like Trevor Lawrence. But I like this matchup a lot. It's against the Browns, and the Browns pass rush, it's going to be there. Trevor Lawrence is going to feel pressure. He's going to be scrambling. We know that scrambling creates yards, creates first downs. But who's to say this doesn't happen when they're in the red zone? Trevor Lawrence can run. He is mobile. He doesn't get that reputation. But I think if there was a time to bet on a Trevor Lawrence rushing touchdown, it's week 2. It's at a decent number of plus 400, and it's up against the Browns defense.
I just remember back to last year when he had a knee injury, and it was against, I think, the Saints on a Thursday night. And he busted off this super long scramble, basically out of nowhere in that game overall, trying to pull it up right now. He had 59 yards rushing on a bad knee. So like you said, he's underrated as far as his athleticism. He had 10 plus yards in all but 3 games last year. Dude can run a bit, and we often see quarterbacks run more in the red zone than they do otherwise. So I don't mind it. 4-1's not bad, given, like you said, he'll probably be in chase by Myles Garrett for majority of this game.
Absolutely. Okay, but I'll give you one more that's more of a regular. I think it's at plus 100. It's Tony Pollard. So the new running back for the Titans. I loved betting on Pollard last year with the Cowboys. I think it's going to be even more important with Tennessee. Going up against the Jets run defense was atrocious in week 1. Christian McCaffrey didn't play, and Jordan Mason ran all over this Jets defense. I'm not high on the Jets by any means this season, and I'm high on Tony Pollard at plus 125. Look at the offense. Will Levis, woof, it was not a good game for him in week 1. They might have to rely a bit more on this run game. And Tony Pollard is seeing a lot of carries, especially in the red zone. So I'll take him to follow up his week 1 performance where he had a touchdown with another one in week 2.
Pollard currently plus 125 at FanDuel Sportsbook. He had a pretty good advantage over Tyjae Spears in the opener. 62% snap rate for Pollard there. He had 16 carries to 4 for Spears as well. So they did say they want to tighten that split a bit, but Pollard definitely had the edge in week 1. So Megan's touchdown bets: Jonathan Taylor plus 110, Mike Evans plus 120, Tutty Trev 4-1, and Tony Pollard plus 125, all available at FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, Megan, last week I asked you for a parlay. Giving you one parlay across week 2. Where are you going there?
Okay, I think we got to stick with our against the spread ones. And I think you'll like the first leg. We're Bucks plus 7.5.
All right,
this is your chance. You get to buy back in. You get that extra half. And this is a big change because I was looking at it at 7 as well. And now we get, that extra insurance with the touchdown. So we'll take the Bucks. It's going to be a high scoring game, I think, competitive against the Lions, but the Bucks are good enough to hold their own. How about the Vikings-Niners game? I think a lot of people are throwing this one away, thinking it's going to be a blowout. I like the angle. I'm like such a sucker for a storyline. I like the angle of Sam Darnold revenge game.
Yeah, there we go.
Backup for the Niners last season. He knows this team well. And don't forget, the Vikings played the Niners last year. And guess who won? Minnesota. I know it was Kirk Cousins. However, I do think that Vikings keep it close. I'm not taking them to win. And then last spread I'll throw in is Cowboys. So it's Cowboys versus Saints. I think the line is at 6.5. This feels fair to me. Dallas is a much better team. I like the Saints. I think that we're overreacting a bit to how bad the Panthers are, and that's why the margin of victory was so big for New Orleans. I think they keep it somewhat in tight, but I do think Dallas ends up covering at -6.5.
All right. 3-leg parlay for Megan here. She is taking the Bucks plus 7.5, the Vikings plus 5.5, and the Cowboys -6.5. That grades out right now at FanDuel Sportsbook at plus 585 for that 3-leg parlay. I'm in, Megan. Let's go. Let's see how things play out on Sunday. That is all that we have here for today and this week on Covering the Spread. Again, find Megan on X at Megan Payton 7. Check her out on FanDuel TV from noon to 2 Eastern, Monday through Friday. Megan, we appreciate the time as always. Good luck to you in week 2. Enjoy the football. We'll talk to you once again next week.
Thank you, Jim. Good luck in week 2. Have fun.
And thank you, Megan, as well. You can find me on X at Jim Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Make sure you subscribe to the Covering the Spread podcast feed and the FanDuel YouTube page as well. Good luck to all of you in week 2. We'll talk to you once again Monday to get set for Monday Night Football. It's the Falcons against the Eagles. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.